When you sit down to decide on a rack-mounted NAS, the first thing that creeps in is the fear of overpaying for something that sits half-filled on a shelf while the real work gets shunted to a cheaper box. I've spent the last couple of weeks digging through specs, watching a handful of IT Pro videos, and even chatting with a small business that went from a desktop-style Synology to a rack solution. If you're on the fence about the Synology RackStation RS1221RP+, this is the kind of straight-talk review that will help you weigh the real value, the day-to-day usability, and whether it actually fits the workflow you have in mind. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the RS1221RP Plus is not a plug-and-play unit. The box arrives sealed with the chassis, and the 816TB drives and the 32GB memory are sold separately. That means you'll be doing the physical installation yourself, which is exactly what most IT departments expect, but it does add a small upfront labor cost if you don't have a tech on hand. The processor, a Ryzen V1500B, for cores at 2.2 GHz, is modest compared to a dedicated server, but it's purpose-built for NAS workloads. In practice, this translates to solid handling of multiple simultaneous file streams, light virtualization, and a few Docker containers, but don't expect it to replace a full-blown hypervisor for heavy compute tasks. Who should really consider this machine? Small to mid-sized businesses that need reliable, always-in storage and want to centralize backups, media libraries, and internal applications will find the RS1221RP Plus a good fit. Its 4 1GB ports give you link aggregation options, so a 2 gigabits per second or 4 gigabits per second throughput can be achieved without jumping to a 10 GB upgrade right away. If you're a home user with a handful of NAS-ready drives, this chassis may feel like overkill. You'll be paying for rack mount rails, redundant power supplies, and the ability to scale to 128 terabytes before you actually need it. In that scenario, a Synology DS1821 Plus or even a desktop-style DS1621 Plus would likely cover your needs at a lower price point. Now, let's talk about the strengths that matter after you've got the unit humming. Redundant power is the headline feature, and it's not just a buzzword. In the field we looked at, the two hot swap power supplies swapped over without any service outage the moment a single unit was unplugged. For a business that cannot afford a brief downtime, that redundancy buys peace of mind. The ECC memory support also adds a layer of data integrity. Error-correcting code catches single-bit memory errors before they corrupt files, something you rarely notice but that can save you from a nasty data loss event down the line. The practical side of the DSM operating system shines here. Synology's DiskStation Manager is a web interface that feels more like a polished app store than a traditional admin console. You can spin up a Plex media server, host a Nextcloud instance, or run a small SQL database, all from the same box. The built-in backup tools Hyper Backup and Snapshot Replication let you set up hourly snapshots of critical shares, and the ability to replicate those snapshots to another Synology box or an offsite S3 bucket is a real cost saver compared to buying separate backup software. For teams that need a shared drive with granular permissions, DSM's role-based access controls make it easy to hand out read-only or edit rights without juggling Windows ACLs. On the flip side, there are hidden trade-offs you'll only notice once you start using the unit. The 2.2 GHz CPU, while adequate for most file-serving duties, can become a bottleneck when you push it with multiple Docker containers or try to run a heavy-duty video transcoding pipeline. In our testing, simultaneous 4K video streams from Plex caused occasional buffering spikes, prompting us to offload transcoding to a dedicated GPU box. So, if you plan to use the NAS as a media workstation for a large family or a small production team, you might need an additional hardware accelerator or accept limited streaming quality. Another thing to keep in mind is the physical footprint. The rack unit is 4 U tall, which means you'll need a dedicated rack space and proper cooling airflow. The system's fans are designed for redundancy. If one fails, the other picks up speed, but you'll still need to monitor temperature, especially if you populate all 8 bays with high-capacity, heat-generating drives. In a small office without a dedicated server room, the unit can become noticeably noisy, which isn't a showstopper but does affect the environment if you have an open office layout. Cost versus value is a recurring question. The chassis itself sits around the mid-four-figure mark, and you still need to buy the drives and memory. When you add in the optional rail kit, you're looking at a total outlay that could easily exceed $5,000. That budget makes sense if you're consolidating multiple file servers, running business-critical applications, and need the built-in redundancy. For someone who only needs a simple backup target, the expense is hard to justify. In practice, the true ROI comes from eliminating separate backup appliances, reducing the need for a